Hey everyone, welcome to Kingdom Builder TV. I'm your host, Jay Heilman. Thank you so much for taking the time to come by and check out our latest video. While we love to bring you exclusive and quality content, we do want to advise you that the subject matter of today's conversation is not so much for the little ears, but for the parents. And while it's a very important subject matter to cover, viewer discretion is advised. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, we'll get on with our feature interview. Safeguarding our children is paramount in today's world. And so when a resource comes along that helps aid us as parents in that mission, I feel it's very important to take advantage of that help. With so many things out there vying to get our children's attention, there is one particular thing that I think is especially important to shield our children from, and that is pornography. Joining me today to talk about her new book, which is coming out March 4th from Nelson Books, called It's Time to Talk to Your Kids About Porn, A Parent's Guide to Helping Children and Teens Develop Sexual Integrity, is author Greta Eskridge. Greta, welcome to Kingdom Builder TV. How are you doing today?
I am doing so great, and I'm really, really glad to be here and to talk about this book with you.
I am so glad to have you here too, and I feel this is something that needs to be talked about. And Greta, I feel that this book comes out at a time when it's needed most, and it really tackles a subject that a lot of churches may be hesitant and even parents to address because it's a very taboo subject. But I feel it's something important that parents know how to address in their homes. So if you would take a moment and tell us a little bit about yourself and this great new book that you have created.
Well, I agree with you. I have been wanting to write this book for 15 years, and over and over, it has just been evident that it hasn't been the right time. I trusted God, and finally, the doors opened, and here we are. I never would have anticipated that I would write a book on this topic. I grew up in a traditional Christian home where we hardly talked about sex at all, and we certainly hardly talked about pornography. It just wasn't something I had to deal with growing up in the 80s, and was not exposed to pornography as a child. I was very fortunate, not even as a teen. But later on in my life, pornography impacted my marriage. And my husband has gone through recovery and now helps men who are dealing with the same issues he dealt with pornography in his life. But as a result, we both became very passionate about protecting our kids. And so this book started just as our own personal journey. How are we going to protect our kids growing up in a time where pornography is so easy to access, and there's the potential for them to be exposed and to suffer through the results of that in the same way that we did? How could we protect them? And as we grew as parents, we have 4 kids now. They range in age from 20 down to 13. We just sort of gathered all this information, and I put it out into a book because what I found was there were so many other parents just like us who were like, what do we do? Where do we go? How do we talk about this? We need some direction. And the book was born.
Yeah, and Greta, the subject of this book, this is not an easy subject to tackle. And like you, I grew up in the 80s. I'll be 45 this year, so it's like I grew up in an era where pornography obviously existed back then, but
Yeah.
it was like in a VHS tape or something. It was a
Yeah.
lot harder to get a hold of. So the only way that you really would have been um, exposed to stuff like that as if your parents had it. And unfortunately, with me, tell you a little bit background on myself. When I was 4 years old, I had
Mm.
discovered a magazine that my dad had left in a place where I could get to,
Wow.
and that was the first time that I was exposed to that. And it wasn't just any pictures. It was like hardcore, and I still have those images etched in my
Mm.
brain 40 years
Wow.
later. And then the following year, when I was 5, we had a VCR, VHS tapes. And for those of you who are watching who don't know what a VHS tape is, this little plastic box that we used to watch movies on and put in the
Yeah.
VCR and stuff. History lesson. But I had been watching cartoons the day before on a VHS tape. And when I sat down to press play on it, my dad had left one of his pornographic VHS tapes in the VCR.
Mm,
And that
mm,
was my first exposure to video. And like
wow.
I said, these are things that I remember. I still have these images etched in my brain 40 years later. And it's
Yeah.
crazy. People really don't realize when you expose yourself to that or expose your children to that, these are
Yeah.
lasting things that have a lasting impression. And that kind of got me, probably much like your husband, on a road to where I thought that looking at stuff like that was normal.
Mm,
I did not grow up in a Christian home. So my dad, basically behind my mom's back, had found out that I had been watching stuff. And
mm,
instead of telling me, Jay, you shouldn't be watching that. It's not something that you should be watching. It's inappropriate kind of thing. My dad's response to me was, don't let your mom find out.
mm.
So
Wow.
in a way, my dad kind of encouraged that, like he was off the hook by saying, don't let your mom find out about it,
Yeah.
or what he thought. So with my kids now, I had, a couple of my kids go to public school, and uh, there was some stuff being looked at cell phones on the school bus, and my son
Mm,
was involved in that. And I sat him down and had a conversation with him and explained to him why we don't look at stuff like
mm.
that and how it can really skew reality of,
Yeah.
especially for a man, like when you get married, it can really skew your reality of what a sexual relationship
Mm.
is realistically like with your wife.
Yeah.
So it was a teachable moment, and that's why when I saw this book, I'm like, you know what, we need to talk about this because
Mm,
this is not talked about very often. It's kind of avoided. But
yeah.
the first question I would have for you is, what would you feel is the best way to start a conversation like this with your children?
Mm. Well, first, I just want to say thank you for sharing your story because I think that is one of the best things we can do for these
Mm,
conversations is before we even talk to our kids to just be able to talk to one another and share our stories and say, this is what happened to me. This is why it matters. Because when we do that, we break down the walls because I think so many of us have stories where pornography has impacted our lives.
mm,
And whether it's personally like you or me as a second party, right? But nevertheless, pornography has impacted us in a negative way and it's been hurtful and damaging. But when we don't say anything, we hide, then we all think, oh, I'm the only one. And instead, what has just happened here is both of us have been able to enter into one another's stories and say, we're not alone. And we know the pain that it causes. So, how can we protect our kids? Because that's what we want to do, right? We want to say, let's write a different story for our children. And so, I think for us, for our kids and having them be part of the conversation, there's two ways that we can go about it. Ideally, it would be before a kid is exposed to pornography, you talk to them, right? And you give them just the most basic information possible. You're not going to give them a lot of information. You're just going to simply give them a definition and what to do if they see porn because they need to know what to look for, right? What it is that they're going to be exposed to. And so
yeah,
I always say, starting as young as 6, 7, 8 years old, because kids that young are on devices or they're around people who are on devices, you could simply say something like this: hey, sweetheart. Hey, buddy. I need to tell you about something called pornography. Pornography is not good for your body, your brain, or your heart. It's my job to keep you safe. So I want to tell you what to do if you see it. So you've established already it's something that is not good for them. You, as their mom or dad, you want to protect them. And then you tell them pornography is pictures or movies of people with no clothes on, shows their private. So we know that we don't show our privates to other people. If you
yeah,
see anything like that, when you're playing a game on your tablet or you're on mom or dad's laptop or someone shows it to you on a phone, even a friend or somebody's big brother or sister, I want you to turn off the tablet or close the laptop or tell that other person, I don't want to look at that. And then you come find me or dad or grandma or grandpa and you tell them, I think I saw pornography. Tell us what happened and we'll help you. So that conversation is literally minutes long. It's so short, it's so simple. You've given them a very clear reason why they need to avoid pornography, what it is, and what to do if they see it. you've given them a plan, and that's what they need. So that's the ideal situation if you are able to talk to them before. Second way it can happen is just like what you described, is if you find out your kid has been exposed, then it comes up organically and you have the opportunity to talk to them about it afterwards. And that is never a time for a parent to beat themselves up and say, oh, I missed this opportunity. No, this is your chance to step into a moment that could be painful or shameful for your kid and to say, oh, I am so sorry you saw that. I want to help you in this moment. And we're going to give you all the help we can. We love you, and it's going to be okay. So those are the
Right.
two ways that it can happen. And it's quick, and your chance to love your kid, either before exposure or after, that doesn't change.
Yeah. And when I had the conversation with my son, my wife had actually found out about it, and she said, this is probably something that you need to
Mm.
discuss with him. And he was scared to death. He thought that I was going to
Of
yell at him,
course.
or, he already had felt shame about that,
Yeah.
when she had found out about that. But, I sat him down and had the conversation like, buddy, I said, this is why we don't do this. And I said, let me tell you something about myself. And I told him about what happened to me. I said, my dad didn't safeguard me. My dad didn't tell
Yeah.
me, have this conversation with me. And so I felt that it was really important to have that conversation with my son because, uh, Greta, it's like, whenever I think about the fact of technology is both a curse and a blessing.
Hmm.
It's such a blessing in the fact that we have everything at our fingertips now. I'm sure you remember back in elementary school when we were doing homework and stuff, we had to actually open up physical books to do
Yeah.
reports and stuff. Now kids have
Yeah.
everything access on Google and stuff, but
Yeah.
we live in a technology driven world now, and I really feel that heeding to God's word is the most important thing that we can do in
Hmm.
combating this, because we also live in a very highly sexualized culture.
Yes.
And you reference numerous scriptures throughout your book. Are there specific Bible verses that were especially meaningful to you on your own journey as you were writing this?
Yeah, one of my favorites comes from the book of Romans, chapter 12, and it's do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. Because I think the temptation is to feel like, oh, this is so big, this is so heavy, it's so much, it's beyond me. I can't do anything to change it. I can't really protect my kids, especially if your kids are older and you're like, they've already been exposed, they know what it is. I can't step into that place and do anything. And to just be overcome by the evil, just like paralyzed by it. And
Yeah.
instead to heed what God says, that promise that we can overcome evil with good, to say, no, the evil is there. It is real. It is dark. Sometimes I would like just be overcome with emotion, sadness for the hurt and the pain that I know was being caused by pornography. And the temptation is to just like, it's for myself, even, it's too heavy. I want to quit. I want to give up. But to instead say, no, if we can step into this place and we can fight back and join God in caring for all the people who are hurt in this process, then we can overcome evil with his good. And I think another verse that is really important to me is from Second Timothy. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of, I think it's strength. I'm blanking right now, and a sound mind. Um, but I think that one is really important too, a power, love, and a sound mind. Because again, we can be paralyzed in the face of pornography. But I think that verse is a great reminder that God has given us not this spirit of fear to be paralyzed. Like, I can't think, I don't know what to say, I don't know what to do, I can't love my kid or my spouse or my friend who's walking through this. Um, that's not the truth. God says, no, I've given you, power over this darkness. You don't have to walk in fear. You can walk in my power. You can walk in my love towards yourself if this is a problem in your own life, towards others, your children, your spouse, his love, to forgive and to find grace, and even a sound mind, meaning we don't have to be paralyzed and say, I don't know what to do, because there are resources out there. There are places where you can go for help. You don't have to journey through this alone. You've got
Right.
God on your side and the people that he's putting in place to say, here's help. We can do this together. And so those verses have really stood out to me as I've walked through this, because I want to rely on God and not say, oh, I'm fighting this on my own. I can't. I need his strength. And then I need the people that he's brought alongside me as well.
Amen. And Greta, the reality is the world that we live in today, there's a lot of darkness. And, it's not just pornography. There's other things that have
Yeah.
still going on in the world today. Slavery is one of them, human trafficking. And, when I was reading your book, I was thinking about a film that I had seen a couple years ago. Actually, it was from Angel Studios. They released a film called Sound of Freedom, which stars Jim Caviezel. And I had actually got a chance to sit down and talk with director Alejandro Monteverdi. And we talked about the film in depth, which highlights the very real reality of human trafficking, many who are children. And, you point out that according to the U.S. Department of Justice, no child is immune to becoming a victim. Individuals can now use websites and social
Mhm.
media to advertise, schedule, and purchase sexual encounters with minors. And it's crazy to even think about that. And just what can happen. How can parents protect their children, and how do we create a greater awareness to prevent these things from happening?
Well, I think one of the biggest ways kids can be ensnared and entrapped in that kind of situation is through things like social media or even video games,
Mm,
because that gives strangers access to your kids. And what can happen is a stranger can pretend to be, a 16-year-old girl talking to your 14-year-old son and making him feel real good about himself, and invites him to send nude pictures. And that boy, his prefrontal cortex is not developed, and he is so excited by this moment, and he is not thinking clearly. He is not acting with wisdom, and essentially he's being played as a victim, and makes a foolish choice in the moment, sends a picture, and then the truth comes out, and that person he thinks is a 16-year-old girl who is telling him that he's attractive and whatnot, reveals the truth that they are part of an organization that is going to show that picture that he just sent to everyone he knows if he doesn't give them $500. And you're like, well,
mm,
nobody would be that dumb that they would fall for that. But it is such a problem. Sextortion is what this is called. It's such a problem, especially with middle school and teenage boys. They are the biggest target, but it's happening to lots of girls too. That the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children said this is like the number one problem happening for kids this age group, because they're just trusting, and they're not like I said, that prefrontal cortex is not developed, and they're making these decisions that have really dire consequences. And
yeah.
many times they're trapped in that moment, and they don't know what to do, because they're like, $500, I can't come up with $500. And they don't have the understanding, because no one's talked to them about it, that they need to go to the police and or the FBI and expose the situation. They just hide because they're afraid and they're ashamed, and they don't know what to do. So the way a parent can help their kid in this situation is to say, there's this thing called sextortion, and I want you to know about it. And I want you to know, if somebody asks you for a picture or says they're going to send you one, and they're talking to you when you play the Nintendo Switch, or a game online, or through your social media, all different kinds of social media. There are so many kinds. and so many different apps. If they're talking to you and this sort of conversation comes up, here's what I want you to do. And yeah, you need to talk to your kid. If your kid is 12, they need to know about this if they're on social media or they're playing games, or even, I would say, even if they're not, because it could even happen through email. A couple of years ago, I got an email and it said, "Dear Mrs. Eskridge, we know you spend a lot of time online and we know you look at a lot of porn online." And I was like, what in the world? This is
Hmm.
insane. But they went on, and the email was graphic and very uncomfortable. Not true, but imagine if I was 13 years old and getting that email, because eventually they said, if you don't give us money, we're going to expose your search history and everything you do on your computer. We're going to expose it to the world. If I'm 13 and I'm getting an email like that, I'm going to panic because no one's told me this is not true. So what I did is I called all my kids in and I was like, "Hey, I got this email. I'm going to read you the first line. I'm going to tell you what to do if this ever happens to you." Because we just don't know how our kids will be targeted. So the best thing we can do is prepare them and tell them, we're on your team. I'm here to fight with you. If this ever happens to you, come to me right away. I will stand with you. We need to go to the police. We need to go to the FBI. This is serious. This is dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can easily see, like, if I was in that situation at 13, having
Yeah.
the having my dad tell me what he told me, like, don't let your mom kind of find out, makes me
Yeah.
glad that when we were growing up, we didn't have cell phones. Because I
Yeah.
often joke with my mom, I'm like, I'm glad I didn't have a cell phone, because if my mom had video evidence of some of the dumb things I did, I would have been grounded for a lot longer than I already was. So
Right.
I'm glad that I didn't that we didn't have to really deal with that on a level that the kids do now.
Yeah.
It's technology, like I said, can be both a curse and a blessing.
Yes.
My kids love to play Fortnite. They love to
Mm-hmm.
play Roblox and stuff like that. And I've reminded them, with my younger kids, my 6 and 7 year old, I said, I don't care if you guys play a game. I said, but the chat feature is not on. And if I
Yes.
find that it's on, your device will be taken away, because I take stuff like that very seriously.
Yeah. As you
And I have,
should.
yeah, and it's scary that you have to even do that, that there could be
Mhm.
somebody out there impersonating a
Yeah.
child when it's actually an adult. And it's,
Yes.
I think that these kind of things, can certainly be can really be very positive points in talking with your kids about it, and the dangers of pornography and just online, just social media in general. But some parents may be hesitant to do so, and
Mm.
it's kind of you ask yourself the question, um, you know, how does talking to your kids about
Mm.
it or avoiding the subject altogether going to affect them and future generations?
Mm.
What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I think it has tremendous potential for good or for harm. And of course, I want to focus on the good because I believe that this situation is not devoid of hope. We think about pornography, we think about sextortion, we think about sex trafficking, and we're just like, again, like it's that whole idea of being overcome by evil and we might feel paralyzed. But if instead we think, wow, we have the opportunity to pour into our kids, like knowledge, discernment, wisdom, so that they can grow up as people who have sexual integrity, just like the title of my book, to take that into their future relationships, into their marriages, which will then impact their kids and then their kids' kids. And I mean, I really have a vision that I believe um, God gave me. He put into my heart that we have the potential to give our kids a gift that instead of growing up in a world where they are overcome by the darkness of pornography and it brings that curse of pain and shame and suffering into their lives and into the lives of their families and future families, instead that we bring the goodness of God's design, which is sex for marriage, and it's his good gift to bring that into their lives instead. Wow, because that's going to impact them for years to come, for the rest of their life. And then, like I said, their children and their children's children, that is a gift. that is available to us if we just have the courage to talk about it with our kids, and to not just hide from the uncomfortable conversation.
Yeah, I think and I think it's really important because, I had a friend that I went to high school with that had done something, and he had told me later on, he's a Christian now, just like me, but
Mm-hmm.
he told me later on, he said, when he's like, I was arrested, and when I told the cop that I didn't know that what I did was illegal, the
Mm-hmm.
police officer told him, ignorance to the law doesn't make it right.
Yeah,
And while what the cop said was true, it's like the whole situation could have been avoided had the
yeah,
parents just taken the time to talk with their kids, explain to them why these kind of things are things that you shouldn't get yourself involved in, uh,
yeah,
or even give any time to.
yeah,
But that has affected much of his life. And he said, "Man, I just wish that somebody would have had a
mm,
conversation with me, taken
yeah,
5 minutes of their time, and said,
yeah,
hey, this is like I know as parents and stuff, we want to tell our kids don't do it.
mm,
Why shouldn't we do it? Because I told you so. No,
yeah,
you need to take the time to explain to them not only why, like not telling them not to do something, but explaining, okay, here's what can happen if this happens.
mm,
And we want and I know that you're probably much the same as me on this, but I want my children to avoid the same dumb mistakes that I made
mm,
as a kid. I don't want them to have to go through some of the hardships and stuff that I had to deal with in life. So that's why I feel it's important to talk to them and say,
yeah,
hey, I'm not just telling you no, don't do that, but here's a reason why you don't do
yeah,
that. And
yeah.
kind of closing out the conversation. Uh, when people do pick up the copy of the book and read it, what's the biggest hope and prayer that you really want them to take away from this the most after reading it?
Well, one of the chapters I talk about parenting from a place of hope instead of a place of fear, chapter 4. And I think that is one of the most important things that you can take away from this is that we don't have to just be sitting in fear and have it either paralyze us so that we don't say anything at all, or to feel like we're helpless and there's nothing that we can do for our kids. That is not the truth. Instead, we need to place our trust in God. And that gives us hope that our kids can choose better, hope that our kids can be protected from evil, and that even if they do make a decision that we wish they wouldn't, that they are not damaged beyond the love and the redemption of God. He is bigger than he's bigger than the deepest pit, and pornography is one of the things that would be in that pit. He is bigger than that, and he can protect our kids and love them through even mistakes that they make. So we don't have to sit in fear. We don't have to sit in shame. Our own stories don't preclude us from talking about this. Instead, they can be the fuel that helps us talk to our kids and to give them something better. And so I think that that's the message that I want parents to hold on to, is that we don't have to be afraid. Instead, we can step into the love and the hope that God provides. And um, yeah, and if you're like, "Oh, I can't have that conversation, I still don't think I can do it. I listened to everything Greta and Jay said, and I don't think I still have it in me." My book has actual scripts that you can read, so you don't even have to come up with the words yourself. There is hope, there is help. You just have to be willing to at least step into picking up the book and reading it. And God could use it to change the life of your family. And we can trust Him in that.
Amen. And I always go back to the scripture, Jeremiah 29:11, when I think that
Mm,
that there's no hope in a
yeah,
situation that, God says, he tells us, it declares the plans he has for us,
yeah,
not of fear, not of anything bad, but to give us hope in the future. And
Yes.
that's important to remember. And I think especially with kids today, I think some parents are afraid to address things with their kids. And it couldn't even, it's not just this, it's just anything. Like,
Yeah.
I know a lot of parents who want to be their kids' friends. And I'm like, you can't do that. You have to, lay down, you know, the guidelines here with
Yeah.
them. And I think that's really important. And so, Greta, a lot of people are probably watching this conversation and listening in and wondering, okay, I'm convinced. I want to pick up this book. I
Mm.
want to be able to find out more information on how I can use this resource to help my family. So, where can people get more information on you, perhaps a website and or social media, and pick up a copy of the new book?
Well, the book is sold everywhere books are sold. So you can find it online at Amazon. You can find it at Barnes and Noble. Walmart carries it. Christianbook.com. It's all over the place. So if you just do a quick Google search, it's time to talk to your kids about porn, the book will come up. As far as following me and the work I'm doing, I'm most active on Instagram. That's the social media that is a part of my world and my work. And you can find me there by searching Greta Eskridge. And you can also look at my website, gretaeskridge.com, and you'll find longer form articles that I've written about this topic and other conversations of things that are important to me. I really believe parents and families want to and need to pursue connection. And that's a big part of the work I do because pornography is a destroyer of connection. And I want to help parents find genuine connection with their kids. And so you'll find all the different ways that you can do that when you look at me on social media, Greta Eskridge, or through my website. So come find me.
Amen. That's great. Well, author Greta Eskridge has been my guest today. In her new book, It's Time to Talk to Your Kids About Porn, A Parent's Guide to Helping Children and Teens Develop Sexual Integrity, will be available March 4th from Nelson Books. And I would highly suggest you picking up a copy of it because it can be a very valuable resource to those who really want to address this with their children, or perhaps picking up a copy to gift to someone else that you think could be a real blessing to. So, Greta, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a pleasure, and I greatly appreciate you coming by to talk with us.
Thank you. I'm so glad we get to have this conversation.
Awesome. Well, until next time, thank you so much for taking the time to check out today's interview with author Greta Eskridge. Until next time, I'm your host, Jay Heilman, reminding you to put Christ first in your lives and everything else will fall into place. God bless you. Hey, everybody. Jay Heilman here from Kingdom Builder TV. I hope you enjoyed the interview with author Greta Eskridge. And I can't tell you how important resources are when you are raising children. And there are so many subjects out there that oftentimes do not get, really acknowledged or talked about. And unfortunately, the talk about pornography and the dangers it poses to our children is not really talked about. And just have a copy of this book. This is a physical copy of the book. It is available on March 4th. It's available from Nelson Books. And I've got a chance to read this book, and it is amazing. It's an amazing resource for parents who are looking for ways to be able to have this discussion with their children. You may have the questions of, how do I address this with the kids in a sensitive yet way that they can understand. And Greta really talks about so many things in this book, and really being able to address this with kids of all ages. As she mentioned in the interview, having a conversation and at least making the children aware of these kind of things as early as 6 is something that is very important. And I tell you what, I wish that I would have had a resource like this. When I was raising kids, my kids range in age from 7 to 26. So I really wish I would have had this earlier. But again, It's Time to Talk to Your Kids About Porn, A Parent's Guide to Helping Children and Teens Develop Sexual Integrity. So go over to her website. You can also go where books are sold. You can also go to Nelson Books, which can be at thomasnelson.com. Have tons of great books over there, including some really awesome Bibles, which I have in my office over here. But again, check this book out. It's a great resource by Greta Eskridge. And if you have not already, go ahead and follow her on social media, because I'm sure she'll be talking more about this in the coming weeks. So thank you so much for joining us for this interview. I hope that it was enlightening to you and encouraging to you. If this is a conversation that you have to have with your kids, great resource. Pick it up now.